proxy drift, and the quiet reassignment of purpose. Across long time horizons, the cost of a single dashboard error compounds. Meetings start serving the chart, notifications chase the number, and the checklist becomes the work. A metric becomes the mission when it is the only thing that reliably moves through the system at scale. Over time, what is easy to count becomes easier to defend, easier to approve, and therefore easier to fund, until the proxy quietly inherits authority. Start with the basic constraint: attention is scarce, and coordination is expensive. A team cannot carry the full story of purpose into every meeting, approval, and handoff. So the system compresses. It turns a complicated reality into a smaller object that can travel: a score, a status color, a weekly target, a compliance checkbox. In the short term, this compression looks like competence. A metric reduces argument, it shortens meetings, it speeds approvals, it helps newcomers understand what good looks like without needing the full context. This is a real trade-off: fidelity versus throughput. You lose nuance, but you gain coordination. Then incentives attach. A metric that is visible becomes a metric that is discussable. A metric that is discussable becomes a metric that is reputational. And a metric that is reputational becomes a metric that is career-shaped. People do not need to be cynical for this to happen. They only need to be adaptive. When praise, budget, and schedule relief correlate with a number, effort begins to flow toward what improves that number. That is the feedback loop. Measurement drives attention. Attention drives behavior. Behavior changes the measured world. The measure looks validated, and so it is used even more. The loop can run even when everyone privately knows the proxy is incomplete, because the proxy is legible, and the underlying purpose is not. Over the mid-horizon, proxy drift emerges from repeated local optimizations. Each quarter, each review, each dashboard refresh, the organization asks, what can we show? What can we compare? What can we audit? The proxy wins those contests because it fits the constraints of reporting and oversight. Another trade-off appears: accountability to the metric versus accountability to the mission. The first is simpler to enforce, the second is harder to prove. A second-order effect follows. Once the metric becomes the language of governance, the mission becomes harder to speak. People learn to translate their work into what the dashboard can hear. Work that cannot be translated becomes invisible, not necessarily because it is unimportant, but because it is non-compliant with the measurement interface. This invisibility is itself a governance decision, even if no one signed it. Across longer horizons, the system starts selecting for those who can produce metric-shaped outputs. The skill becomes metric fluency rather than domain fidelity. The organization grows more resilient against criticism because it can point to numbers, while becoming less resilient against reality because the numbers may no longer track what matters. Tail risk increases. Rare failures that the metric did not model accumulate quietly because the dashboard's confidence can outpace the world's complexity. Uncertainty matters here. No metric is pure signal. It always contains noise, and it always encodes assumptions about what the future will demand. When the environment changes, the proxy can stay stable while the mission drifts out from under it. Stability in the chart can be a form of blindness in the system. This is why measurement is not just a tool, it is governance. It allocates attention, and attention allocates identity. People become what their systems repeatedly ask them to be. When the proxy is rewarded, people learn to inhabit the proxy. And because no system is neutral, a metric carries values even when it looks objective. It defines what counts as progress, which defines what counts as delay, which defines what counts as waste. In that way, measurement quietly draws moral boundaries without moral language. The organization does not need to declare a philosophy, it only needs to promote what is countable. Responsibility, then, is not located only in a leader or a policy. It is distributed across the measurement choices that shape what can be seen, what can be defended, and what can be ignored. Governance is part of the system, whether or not it is named as such. Let a single reflection be held at one chosen time horizon, this week, this quarter, or this year. Name one metric that feels inevitable in your environment, and name the hidden assumption it makes about what matters. Not an argument, not a reform plan, just an acknowledgement of the assumption. What does this number treat as real? What does it treat as irrelevant? And what risk becomes easier to miss because the dashboard makes something else easier to show? Reflection is a practice, not a belief. And it begins by noticing where the proxy has quietly gained the right to speak for the purpose. The mission does not vanish in a single decision. It is replaced by what the system can count. Time reveals failure modes.